This is going to be the only slide that I have for this short presentation. My specialty is in the sustainability of digital assets. And there's a good chance that during the past year you have seen some headlines like Bitcoin energy consumption is rising fast. You might have seen news about power plants, idle power plants, natural gas plants, for example, in New York being revived for the purpose of Bitcoin mining, coal mines being brought back to life to power Bitcoin mining in China, and overall, very recently as well, some news coming from Sweden that they plan to banish this practice, cryptocurrency mining in Europe, or want the EU to ban it. Um, how did we get here? What happened? Because the Bitcoin system itself does indeed consume a whole lot of power, and when we think about digital assets, Bitcoin still is the first one that pops to mind because now it's still dominating the entire cryptocurrency market, being the largest cryptocurrency available today with a market capitalization of around $1 trillion. Behind the Bitcoin system, there is a huge need for energy. As of today, this network requires as much electrical power as a country like Ireland, which is, by the way, also comparable to the total electricity power demand of all our global data centers. And what are we really using that energy for then? Well, when we're running Bitcoin, or the people that are running Bitcoin, they need to participate in what is the block creation process for Bitcoin's underlying blockchain technology. In order for new transactions on Bitcoin, which is ultimately a currency and a payment system, to be processed, they need to be put into a new block, and they need to be put into the Bitcoin blockchain. And the only way to do that is through this process that is known as mining. And I will avoid a very technical explanation of that. I don't have the time for that, but what I can say is that that process resembles a massive game of guess the number. What's going on is that in this network, you have 3 million dedicated, highly specialized machines constantly generating quintillions of guesses every second of the day non-stop. At the moment, 160 quintillion guesses every second of the day non-stop, trying to guess a certain winning number, which will allow them to create the next block for the Bitcoin blockchain. And even though they're producing all those guesses, they will only get it right once every 10 minutes. On average, every guess that is not correct is, well, it serves no further purpose, so it's just immediately discarded, which means that we're effectively using all this energy to generate what's ultimately just useless numbers. There is a purpose to that, of course. This ultimately provides security to the network in the sense that if you want to attack the Bitcoin network in some way, you need to produce more useless calculations than the participants currently producing those useless calculations already in the network. But it's a very expensive way to secure the network and a very environmentally harmful way to secure the network. Historically, most of these miners have been located in countries like China, nowadays Kazakhstan, also in the US, in states like Kentucky. And they're using, for a majority, fossil fuel-based power to power these operations. So the carbon footprint associated with it all is also quite substantial. In fact, we're talking about close to 94 megatons of carbon dioxide that are emitted as a result of the power consumed by the system every year, which is close to twice our total net CO2 savings from deploying electric vehicles all around the world. It's also more than the carbon footprint of annual mining for real gold. So also in that sense, even though we're talking about a digital asset, this has a very real world impact. And then we're not even there yet in terms of what's being produced in terms of environmental impact, because these miners, as we call them, also use highly specialized equipment that tends to become obsolete really quickly. So at the end of the line, they also put out quite a bit of electronic waste, which is comparable to the amount of small IT equipment that's produced by my home country, the Netherlands. And then I haven't even talked yet about the chips that are needed to produce these mining devices in the first place. We're currently facing a global chip shortage. So there is an impact that the demand for these machines has on that side as well. What do we get back for all of this? Well, not a whole lot. We're talking about 1% of global electricity consumption, but at the same time, the Bitcoin network is doing something like 100 million transactions a year, which compares to roughly 0.014% of what our traditional financial institutions handle every year in terms of digital payments. They handle around 700 billion digital payments every year. So that gives us extreme footprints for single Bitcoin transactions. The carbon footprint of a single Bitcoin transaction as a result can amount to more than 900 kilograms of carbon. And I just saw the other day that can exceed the carbon footprint of actually more than 2 6-hour plane flights. So it's a gigantic number. It's also more than 2 million times the carbon footprint of a Visa payment, payment in our regular financial system, per single unique Bitcoin transaction. It's quite extreme numbers also in terms of energy use and electronic waste per transaction. So it's an extremely power inefficient system. And of course, this is driving concerns that if this adoption continues to grow, then we could be talking about several percentage of global electricity that are ultimately going to be needed to power the system. It's already 1%. And if digital assets like Bitcoin continue to gain in popularity, yeah, this could negate a whole lot of our efforts to decarbonize ultimately. So this is why we are very concerned with what's going on in this space when it comes to digital assets. Now, I also want to share a little bit of a positive side to it all, except, well, not to Bitcoin, but the good news is that at least the developments in the digital asset space have led to new algorithms being developed to run these digital assets. So if you are running cryptocurrencies nowadays, they don't need to have an impact like Bitcoin is having on the world. You can run digital assets on a more sustainable alternative, like, for example, the most well-known alternative is known as proof of stake. I will avoid explaining how that works, but I will say that it replaces what is the mining in Bitcoin, and it requires only 0.01% or less of the electricity that you would need if the system were to run on Bitcoin's mining software. So there are ways to do this more sustainably. But yeah, we have to be very aware that for now, there is no plan for the Bitcoin community, at least, to implement this in Bitcoin, which means that as people continue to invest their money in at least this specific digital assets and similar digital assets that are mineable like Bitcoin, we are going to be witnessing a growing impact on the world. But I would encourage people to not let them prevent that from looking into the digital asset space. It should just make people realize that you need to design or use the right digital assets. That's pretty much all for my short presentation. I hope that this has learned a little bit about the impact these assets can have on the world.